I need you to listen to me for a moment, not because I'm wiser than you, not because I have some secret formula for success, but because I'm 74 years old and there's something about life that took me more than 4 decades to understand. 40 years. That's a long time to chase the wrong thing. My name is Daniel Reeves. For most of my life, people would have called me successful. I built a consulting firm that eventually employed more than 200 people. My income was more money than my father ever imagined anyone in our family could make. There was a house with big windows, 2 cars in the driveway, vacations in places I couldn't even pronounce when I was young. From the outside, my life looked like the American dream. But if you had asked me privately, somewhere around my late 50s, whether I actually felt fulfilled, I wouldn't have known how to answer. Because the strange thing about chasing success is that the closer you think you are to the finish line, the more it moves. Every time you reach one goal, another one appears. And for a long time, I believed that was normal. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. My father worked in a metal plant. He wasn't a loud man, didn't talk much about his feelings. But I remember his hands. They were always rough, scratched up from years of lifting things that were heavier than they should have been. Every evening he'd come home, sit at the kitchen table, and rub his hands together like he was trying to wake them up again. As a kid, I noticed something else too. The way people treated him. Not cruelly, but quietly. Like he didn't really count, like he was invisible. And something about that bothered me more than I could explain. I was maybe 11 years old when I decided something without saying it out loud. I told myself, one day people will respect me. One day nobody will look past me like that. That decision shaped almost everything that came after. In college, I worked harder than anyone I knew. While my friends went to parties, I was in the library. While they took weekends off, I was working internships. I told myself it was temporary. Just a few years of effort. Just a little sacrifice now, so life could be easier later. That phrase followed me for most of my adult life. Just a few more years. When I got my first real job, I worked 60 hours a week, sometimes more. When my supervisor asked who wanted extra projects, my hand went up before anyone else's. I climbed the ladder quickly. Promotions, bigger responsibilities, longer hours. Eventually, I left and started my own firm. Those early years were intense. There were nights when I slept on the office couch. There were months where I barely noticed what day it was. But every time exhaustion crept in, I reminded myself why I was doing it. I was building something. I was becoming somebody. At least that's what I thought. Around that time, I married my wife, Laura. She was patient in ways I didn't fully appreciate back then. In the beginning, we talked about everything, our future, places we wanted to visit, the kind of life we imagined. But as the company grew, my attention shifted. Not intentionally, it just happened slowly. Work became the thing that demanded the most of me, the thing that always felt urgent. When our son Ethan was born, I remember holding him and thinking, I'm going to give this kid everything I never had. Security, opportunity, a better life. And in my mind, that meant one thing: work harder, build more, provide more. So that's what I did. The business expanded faster than I expected. More clients, more employees, more responsibility. By my mid-40s, the company was doing better than I had ever imagined. Financially, we were comfortable. But something else was happening at the same time. Something I didn't notice clearly until much later. I was missing things. Little things at first. A school play, a weekend trip, a dinner conversation. They didn't seem important compared to the meetings and deadlines waiting for me. I always assumed there would be another chance. One memory in particular still stays with me. Ethan must have been about 8 years old. He walked into my home office holding a small model airplane he had built from a kit. I was answering emails, half focused on my screen. He said, "Dad, look what I made." Without turning around, I raised one finger. Just a minute. I remember hearing him stand there quietly. Then after a few seconds, he left the room. At the time, it didn't feel like a big moment, just another interruption in a busy day. But something changed after that. I didn't notice it immediately. It happened slowly. Ethan stopped bringing things into my office, stopped asking if I could come see what he built, stopped knocking on the door when it was closed. At first, I thought he was just getting older, more independent. Kids grow up fast, people said. But years later, Laura told me something that still stings when I think about it. She said that after that day with the airplane, Ethan had walked into the kitchen and asked her a question. "Mom, when Dad says, 'just a minute,' does that mean no?" I wasn't there when he asked it, but somehow hearing it later hurt even more. Because I realized that moment I barely remembered was a moment he never forgot. Life is mostly made of small moments like that, and they don't wait. By the time the company reached its peak, about 20 years after I started it, I had everything I once believed would finally make me feel satisfied. Recognition in my industry, financial freedom, a house larger than the one I grew up in. But the feeling I expected never arrived. Instead, something strange happened. The goals kept changing. Once we hit a certain revenue, I wanted to double it. Once I bought the house, I started thinking about the next investment. Once I achieved stability, I worried about losing it. The finish line kept moving. I didn't understand it at the time, but I was chasing a feeling I thought success would create. The feeling of being enough, of mattering, of finally proving something. The truth is, achievements can't give you that. They can impress people, they can distract you, but they can't answer the quiet question most of us carry inside. Am I enough? That answer has to come from somewhere else. The moment it finally hit me wasn't dramatic. No big crisis. Just a quiet realization one evening. I was sitting in the living room after dinner. Laura was reading. Ethan was home from college for the weekend, and I noticed something strange. They were comfortable with each other in a way that didn't fully include me. Not because they didn't love me, but because they had built years of shared memories together while I was somewhere else. I had provided the house, but they had built a life inside it. And for the first time in decades, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not failure, not regret exactly, something closer to loneliness. The strange kind of loneliness that happens when you realize you were present for the big milestones, but absent for most of the life in between. That night I thought about the promise I made to myself when I was 11, that I would become somebody. And suddenly I realized something important. I had succeeded at the wrong mission. I spent 40 years proving my worth to the outside world, while quietly neglecting the places where my presence mattered most. These days I notice things I used to ignore. morning sunlight through the kitchen window, conversations that don't have a goal, time that isn't scheduled. I still work a little, but I don't treat work like the center of my identity anymore. And I've noticed something interesting about people my age. Some of them are still chasing, still comparing, still measuring their lives against someone else's scoreboard, and they're exhausted. Others have stepped off that track. They've stopped trying to prove something. They're simply living. And those people seem lighter somehow, more peaceful. If you're listening to this right now, maybe you're in the middle of building something, working long hours, chasing goals that feel incredibly important. There's nothing wrong with ambition. There's nothing wrong with wanting to create a better life. But be careful about the story you tell yourself. If the story is, "I'll finally be happy when I reach that goal," you might be setting a trap for yourself, because there will always be another goal, another milestone, another reason to delay the life you're living right now. The strange thing about getting older is that you realize how fast the years move. Decades that once looked enormous start to feel small. 40 years can pass while you're busy planning the future. And when you finally stop long enough to look around, the people you love may already be living a life you barely participated in. And when you finally stop long enough to look around, the people you love may already be living a life you barely participated in. Tonight, when you walk through that door and someone wants to show you a model airplane, or just tell you about their day, pause for a second. Ask yourself, what is that minute actually worth to you? Because 30 years from now, you may discover there isn't a fortune in the world big enough to buy it back.